Imagine a creature the size of a small car, covered in a massive bony shell, slowly trudging across the ancient plains of South America. This is not a fantastical movie monster, but a real animal that inhabited our planet just a few thousand years ago. Meet the Glyptodon, one of the most extraordinary representatives of prehistoric fauna. When paleontologists first discovered the remains of these creatures, they were astonished. Before them lay an almost complete shell, more than 2 meters in diameter, composed of hundreds of bony plates fused into a single, nearly impenetrable armor. The name Glyptodon comes from ancient Greek and means carved tooth, a reference to the unusual structure of its teeth. These animals belong to the family Chlamyphoridae and were distant relatives of modern armadillos, although they surpassed them in size by many times. Glyptodons appeared in the Pliocene, about 5 million years ago, and successfully survived until the very end of the last ice age. During the height of the Glyptodon's dominance, South America was an isolated island continent where evolution followed a completely unique path. Distinct forms of life developed there that existed nowhere else on the planet. Glyptodons became some of the most successful inhabitants of this lost world. The size of an adult Glyptodon was truly impressive. Its body length reached up to 3 meters, and its shoulder height was about 1.5 meters. These giants weighed between 1.5 and 2 tons, comparable to the mass of a modern rhinoceros. But the most striking feature, of course, was the shell. Thick and strong, it reliably protected the entire body of the animal from above and along the sides. The Glyptodon's shell consisted of numerous bony plates, each with a unique raised pattern. These plates fused together to form a solid, monolithic structure that, unlike the armor of modern armadillos, could not curl up. The Glyptodon was permanently enclosed in its armor, like a medieval knight encased in plate armor. The head of the Glyptodon was also protected by a small bony shield formed by fused plates. This shield covered the upper part of the skull, leaving only the eyes, nostrils, and mouth exposed. Imagine a miniature version of a tank's armor. That is roughly what the head of this animal looked like. But the most impressive defensive feature was the tail. In Glyptodons, the tail was covered with bony rings equipped with sharp spikes. This structure resembled a medieval mace and served as a formidable weapon. Some species of Glyptodons could swing their armored tails with such force that they inflicted serious injuries on their opponents. Scientists have found marks on fossilized Glyptodon shells that could only have been made by the tails of other Glyptodons. This indicates that fierce battles took place between males, during which they struck each other with their bony clubs. Such fights were waged over territory and the right to mate with females. Despite their intimidating appearance and powerful armor, Glyptodons were exclusively peaceful herbivores. Their teeth lacked enamel and grew throughout their lives, constantly wearing down from chewing tough vegetation. This type of dentition is characteristic of animals that feed on coarse grasses and leaves. The diet of the Glyptodon consisted of low-growing vegetation from the ancient pampas, vast grassland plains of South America. They grazed on grasses, fed on young shrub shoots, and possibly consumed aquatic plants along the banks of rivers and lakes. In the treeless tundra and steppes they inhabited, they could also dig up roots and tubers. The Glyptodon's powerful, short legs were adapted to carrying the heavy burden of its shell. The front limbs were especially strong, allowing the animal to dig into the ground in search of food. At the tips of the toes were strong claws that helped not only in foraging, but also in defense against predators. The world in which Glyptodons lived was very different from today's. During the Pliocene and Pleistocene, the climate of South America was cooler and drier. Vast areas were covered by open landscapes, steppes, and savannas, interspersed with sparse forest patches. Herds of giant animals roamed these ancient plains. Alongside Glyptodons grazed toxodons, massive hoofed mammals the size of rhinoceroses, macrauchenias, strange creatures with trunks and long necks, and enormous ground sloths, such as Megatherium, which reached the size of elephants. It was truly a lost world of giants. Glyptodons preferred open areas with abundant grassy vegetation. They avoided dense forests, where their massive shells hindered movement among trees. Riverbanks and lakeshores were their favored habitats, as fresh greenery and drinking water were always available there. Interestingly, despite their armor, Glyptodons were excellent swimmers. Their shells, though massive, contained air cavities that provided buoyancy. The animals could swim across rivers and even small lakes in search of new grazing grounds. This ability helped them spread across large areas of South and Central America. About 3 million years ago, a monumental event occurred: the formation of the Isthmus of Panama, which connected North and South America. Scientists call this event the Great American Biotic Interchange. Animals from the north flooded southward, and South American fauna began to expand into northern territories. Glyptodons were among the few South American animals that successfully migrated north. Their remains have been found in what is now Central America, Mexico, and even the southern United States. Just imagine, these armored giants once wandered across lands that are now Texas and Florida. The lifestyle of Glyptodons was slow and deliberate. Their massive bodies and heavy shells did not allow them to move quickly. The maximum speed of a Glyptodon likely did not exceed that of a leisurely walking human. But they did not need speed, as their protection was almost impenetrable. A Glyptodon's day was spent constantly searching for and consuming vegetation. To maintain its enormous mass, the animal had to eat tens of kilograms of grass every day. They moved slowly across the plains, with their heads lowered, continuously cropping grass with their powerful jaws. Scientists suggest that Glyptodons may have been solitary animals or lived in small groups. The discovery of multiple shells in one location suggests that at times these animals gathered together, perhaps in particularly favorable feeding areas or during the breeding season. The breeding season was a special time in the life of Glyptodons. Males became aggressive and territorial, engaging in battles for mating rights. These fights were spectacular, with two armored giants colliding, trying to push each other back while swinging their spiked tails. The blows from the bony club at the end of the tail were so powerful that they could even break through a rival's strong shell. Fossils show characteristic damage, cracks and dents, located exactly where an opponent's tail could strike. Some injuries were severe enough to have been fatal. After mating, the female carried her offspring for about a year. The newborn Glyptodon came into the world with a soft shell that gradually hardened and ossified. During the first months of life, the young stayed close to its mother, feeding on her milk and slowly transitioning to plant food. Young Glyptodons grew slowly, and their shells fully formed only after several years. During this vulnerable period, juveniles faced the greatest danger from predators. The mother fiercely defended her offspring, using her tail as a weapon against any threat. The lifespan of Glyptodons appears to have been quite long. Scientists believe these animals could live 40 to 50 years. Their slow metabolism, typical of large herbivores, contributed to longevity. Old Glyptodons accumulated scratches and scars on their shells, a record of years lived and encounters with danger. Interestingly, the shells of Glyptodons continued to grow throughout the animal's life. The bony plates gradually thickened, and new layers of bone were added. By studying these layers, similar to tree rings, modern scientists can determine the age of a fossilized animal. Despite their powerful defenses, Glyptodons were not completely invulnerable. Ancient South America was home to predators capable of posing a threat even to these armored giants. The main enemies of Glyptodons were Smilodons, the famous saber-toothed cats, and dire wolves that hunted in packs. Smilodons were formidable predators, about the size of modern lions, armed with enormous saber-like canines up to 18 centimeters long. They specialized in hunting large prey and possessed incredibly powerful forelimbs, capable of bringing down even very large animals. When attacking a Glyptodon, a Smilodon could not penetrate its shell directly. Instead, the predator tried to flip the victim onto its back to reach the unprotected soft belly. This was a dangerous tactic, as the Glyptodon fiercely resisted, swinging its armored tail. A single blow from this bony club could shatter a predator's bones, or even kill it outright. Direwolves, which hunted in packs, represented a different type of threat. These predators were larger than modern wolves and had more powerful jaws. A pack could surround a Glyptodon, wearing it down with constant attacks from different sides, trying to bite its legs or the unprotected parts of its head. Young and elderly Glyptodons were especially vulnerable to predator attacks. Juveniles had not yet fully ossified shells, while older animals moved more slowly and could not defend themselves as effectively. This is why females with offspring likely stayed together, forming a kind of defensive circle. However, the greatest threat to Glyptodons was not predators, but changes in the environment. The climate gradually shifted as the Ice Age came to an end. Temperatures rose, glaciers retreated, and familiar pastures turned into forests or deserts. Glyptodons, adapted to life on open grassy plains, lost their habitats. About 13,000 years ago, a new and most dangerous predator appeared on the American continents: humans. The first people, arriving from Asia via the Bering Land Bridge, were skilled hunters armed with stone spears and adept at cooperative hunting of large game. For ancient hunters, the Glyptodon was a valuable source of resources. Its meat could feed a tribe for a long time, and its enormous shell was used as shelter from the elements. Archaeologists have discovered ancient human camps in South America, where Glyptodon shells served as roofs for primitive dwellings. Hunting a Glyptodon was dangerous, but feasible. A group of hunters surrounded the animal, cutting off its escape routes. They then hurled spears at unprotected areas, such as the legs, head, and belly. Once wounded, the Glyptodon became sluggish, and the hunters finished it off with heavy stones or by driving spears into vulnerable spots. Finds of Glyptodon bones bearing marks from stone tools indicate that humans did indeed hunt these animals. Some shells show impact marks, delivered with such force that they could only be the result of deliberate hunting. Moreover, ancient people may have used fire to hunt Glyptodons. By setting grasslands ablaze, they drove the animals into traps or toward cliffs. Slow-moving Glyptodons could not escape the flames quickly and became easy prey. Human hunting was not the only threat. Climate change continued, and around 11 to 10,000 years ago, a rapid warming began. The vast grasslands where Glyptodons grazed started to be overtaken by forests. The new vegetation, trees and shrubs, was unsuitable for these specialized herbivores. The area of suitable habitat shrank, and Glyptodon populations became increasingly fragmented and isolated from one another. In small, isolated groups, inbreeding began, weakening genetic diversity and reducing the viability of offspring. Additionally, as the climate warmed, new animal species arrived in South America from the north, competing with Glyptodons for the remaining pastures. Fast and agile herbivores such as deer and camelids proved to be better adapted to the new conditions. The combination of all these factors, Human hunting, climate change, habitat loss, and competition with new species proved fatal for Glyptodons. Around 10,000 years ago, these remarkable animals disappeared completely from the face of the earth. Their reign, which had lasted millions of years, came to an end. The scientific discovery of Glyptodons began in the 19th century, when the first mysterious fossils were found in South America. Local residents had long encountered enormous bony domes protruding from the ground, but did not understand what they were. Some mistook them for fossilized shells of giant turtles, or even remnants of ancient civilizations. The first scientific description of a Glyptodon was made by the British paleontologist Richard Owen in 1838. He studied shell fragments and teeth sent to him from Argentina and realized that he was dealing with a completely new species, unknown to science. Owen gave it the name that is still used today. A real breakthrough in the study of Glyptodons occurred when nearly complete skeletons with intact shells were discovered. The first such find was made in Argentina in the mid-19th century. When scientists saw an entire shell more than 2 meters in diameter, their astonishment knew no bounds. The famous naturalist Charles Darwin also encountered Glyptodon remains during his voyage on the ship Beagle in the 1830s. He found shell fragments in South America and sent them to England for study. These finds helped Darwin develop his theory of evolution, as he noticed similarities between extinct Glyptodons and modern armadillos. Indeed, Glyptodons are distant relatives of modern armadillos. Both belong to the order Xenarthra, which also includes anteaters and sloths. However, their evolutionary paths diverged millions of years ago. Glyptodons evolved into giant armored creatures, while armadillos remained relatively small. Discoveries of Glyptodon remains continue to this day. Thanks to the dry climate of the Argentine pampas, many shells have been preserved in excellent condition. Sometimes, farmers digging in their fields come across entire skeletons buried thousands of years ago. One of the most remarkable discoveries was made in 2015, when an Argentine farmer found 4 nearly complete Glyptodon shells lying side by side on his land. Scientists suggested that these animals died together, possibly trapped during a flood or landslide. This discovery supported the hypothesis that Glyptodons may have lived in groups. The study of fossil remains has allowed scientists to learn a great deal about Glyptodon biology. Analysis of tooth wear showed that these animals fed on tough grasses. Isotopic analysis of bones helped determine the climate in which they lived and what exactly they ate. It turned out that the Glyptodon diet was rather monotonous and consisted mainly of grasses. The structure of the Glyptodon skeleton reveals remarkable adaptations to life under a heavy shell. Parts of the spine were fused to the inner surface of the shell, forming a rigid framework. This limited mobility, but provided the necessary strength to support the enormous weight of the armor. Scientists discovered that the Glyptodon shell was not just a bony covering, but a complex, multi-layered structure. The outer layer consisted of dense bone with raised patterns. The middle layer was porous to reduce weight, and the inner layer was dense again. This design provided maximum protection with relatively low weight. Interestingly, the patterns on the shell plates were unique to each species of Glyptodon. By these patterns, paleontologists can determine exactly which species a particular shell belonged to. About 10 different species of Glyptodons have been described, differing in size and structural details. The largest species was Glyptodon clavipes, which reached 3 meters in length and weighed up to 2 tons. There were also smaller species, no larger than a big pig. All were united by characteristic features: a massive shell, a short tail with bony rings, and powerful short legs. Modern technologies allow scientists to study Glyptodons in unprecedented detail. Computed tomography of shells has shown how muscles and ligaments were attached and how the animal moved. Three-dimensional modeling has helped reconstruct the biomechanics of Glyptodon locomotion and understand how effectively it could use its tail as a weapon. Genetic studies have confirmed the relationship between Glyptodons and modern armadillos. Scientists have even managed to extract fragments of DNA from fossil bones, although a complete genome has not yet been reconstructed. These data have helped refine the evolutionary tree and determine when the lineages of Glyptodons and their modern relatives diverged. Museums around the world take pride in Glyptodon specimens in their collections. Museums in Argentina are particularly rich in finds, displaying dozens of beautifully preserved shells. Some are so well preserved that traces of the skin that once covered the bony plates are still visible. Glyptodons have become an important part of South America's paleontological heritage. They symbolize the unique evolutionary path of the continent, which developed in isolation for millions of years. Together with giant ground sloths, toxodons, and other strange creatures, Glyptodons formed a distinctive ecosystem. Studying the causes of Glyptodon extinction provides important lessons for understanding modern ecological problems. Their disappearance shows how climate change, combined with human hunting, can lead to catastrophic consequences for large animals. Many modern species face similar threats today. Interestingly, local legends of indigenous peoples of South America contain references to giant armored animals. Some researchers believe these legends may be echoes of real encounters between ancient humans and Glyptodons. Although this hypothesis is debated, it highlights the deep impression these animals left. After the death of Glyptodons, their shells often became natural shelters. Small animals lived inside them, and birds used them as nests. Some shells, lying for thousands of years, became part of the landscape, covered with mosses and lichens. Such shells are sometimes found standing upright, protruding from the ground like stone domes. There is even a hypothesis that some round stone structures found in South America and attributed to ancient civilizations may actually be fossilized Glyptodon shells. This is unlikely, but it illustrates how unusual and mysterious these finds appear. Reconstructions of Glyptodons created by paleoartists depict an animal that looks both strange and majestic. Some artists portray Glyptodons with fur on the unprotected parts of the body, such as the legs and head. This is quite plausible, given that they lived in the relatively cold climate of the Ice Age. In conclusion, it is worth noting that these remarkable animals left an indelible mark on the history of life on Earth. They demonstrated how evolution can create extraordinary forms perfectly adapted to their time and place. Their massive shells, found throughout South America, stand as silent witnesses to an era when armored giants roamed the plains. Glyptodons existed for about 5 million years, a span that seems like eternity from a human perspective. During that time, they survived numerous climate changes, adapted to different conditions, and spread across 2 continents. Their success was undeniable, but as history shows, even the most successful species are not eternal. Today, we can see Glyptodons only in museums and illustrations. Yet thanks to the work of paleontologists, we know enough about these animals to imagine what they were like in life. Their story is a reminder of the richness and diversity of life on our planet.